Hello, classmates. For this week's discussion, I want to show you and tell a little about my project that I worked on. My research was focused in on what allows the Americans to win the American Revolution. And more specifically, it wasn't so much how we were able to defeat the British on the battlefield, because on the battlefield, for the most part, we were not an overwhelming force that was able to even stand up to the British. But it was what we did before that that allowed us to get into a position to allow the victories on the battlefield. It was the small things we did. More appropriately worded, it was partisan warfare, or as we may call it, guerrilla warfare. Paul Thompson, one of the sources that I looked into and used, he writes that the American militia looked to turn poor military resources and their enemy occupiers' own inherent logistical weakness to the Patriots' advantage. And I find that becomes the key, especially on two campaigns that really are the key to the victory that allows the Americans to win. The first one was at Saratoga, and Saratoga being a three-pronged attack. However, the three prongs never make it to the battle, and Burgoyne is left on his own. But as Burgoyne is left on his own, and he doesn't know that he is on his own, perhaps one of the greatest drawbacks is the slow, almost bloodletting that has happened to him. We know that Burgoyne traveled with a very logistical heavy force. In June of 1777, he asks for 500 wagons, each wagon with 2 horses, 400 more horses for artillery. He follows that up in July with another request for more horses and more wagons. And with that much weighting down, his army is going to start to move slowly, which is definitely something that the local militias use in that area to hit him and hurt him in his strength. And that would be the fact that he has a large army. He needs a lot of supplies. And so in the normal pace that they would have been moving, he slows them down because they are constantly coming across trees falling down, as Burgoyne writes in one of his letters. Large timbers cut and put branches that are intertwined, or small skirmish battles like the one that we are going to see at Fort Anne, where a small group of militia will tie Burgoyne up until Burgoyne's forces are running out of supplies, and then he is forced to divide and send some of those forces over to Bennington, where they are defeated. Thus, Burgoyne, in a weakened state, is forced to engage the Americans, which now gives the Americans the advantage. And we see the same thing in the South, especially with Cornwallis, and perhaps the best known individual from the South, Francis Marion the Swamp Fox. He sends Tarleton after him, and he basically just puts it, "I most sincerely hope you will get at Mr. Marion." But as we know, Tarleton chases but never catches the Swamp Fox. And instead, Cornwallis is forced to divide his army up and to split and to push deeper and deeper into Carolina, and then eventually up into North Carolina. He might be winning battles, but he's farther away from supply lines. And eventually that allows Cornwallis's weakened army to be forced into a situation where they have to get to the coast, they have to get supplies, they need a deep water port, and they march towards Yorktown. And of course, we already know that in Yorktown, the end result of what happens, where the colonial forces are victorious. But that victory comes because you have a militia force, not even the Continental Army, that is engaging the enemy in partisan warfare. And that partisan warfare is a slow drain that the British were not prepared to engage in, and in the end allows the American forces to be victorious. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the enjoyment of having all of you in class. I've enjoyed all of your presentations over the past few weeks. Have a good night.